Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Pieter Griesel. I'm a director at Griesel Consulting. We are a labor law, construction law, and general corporate and commercial law consultancy in Johannesburg. Right, everybody has been quite hard hit by the current pandemic. I'm just going to give you a little bit of a background of the way that the legislation works on this. You will all be aware that the President declared a state of disaster a few weeks ago, and in terms of the Disaster Management Act, quite a lot of regulations were promulgated. As you can imagine, all of these regulations were written in haste, and there were a lot of unclear portions to it, and lots of issues that were not really addressed. So we've had about, I think, 2 amendments to that. The basic regulations deal with the specific measures in terms of the pandemic. As you see on the screen, social distancing, hygiene, and then after that came the lockdown period, which is now 3 weeks long, and as you all know, have been extended for another 2 weeks, during which only certain essential services are allowed to operate. And the range of essential services was slightly increased during the regulations that were promulgated on Monday this week. Right. The government made 2 basic interventions in respect of the pandemic. The one was in respect of employee remuneration. Those of you who have attended the webinar of my partner yesterday would have gone through all the different options of how you go about to pay your employees during a period like this. Today, I want to focus on small business interventions, both by government and by private sector. From the start, I need to point out, and you will see on the screen, there's a wide variety of the state departments, semi-state organizations, as well as private organizations who are providing some form of support, whether financial or advisory. Most of the information in respect of these interventions is not very detailed. It is not very clear. We have most of our information emanates from the press releases that we made. Lots of the other information that I have comes from their websites and so forth. But as we go through each of these different interventions, you will see, and I will highlight why we do not have such a lot of information on all of them. I'm going to start off basically first by the interventions by government. The first of these is from SARS, the South African Revenue Services. Those of you who have learners or trainees in your employ will know about the employment tax incentive, where you get a tax incentive to employ people of certain ages for certain jobs. This tax incentive has been extended during the pandemic to have a more general application. Now, like with all the SARS interventions, it is only applicable to tax compliant businesses. As a background to this, and you will see this as a golden thread running through all these different initiatives, all these initiatives are only focused on hardship by employers or by small businesses due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, we all know that South Africa has been in a recession quite a while before the pandemic hit us, and that lots of companies were already in trouble before this. It is very clear from all of the terms and conditions of all of these different interventions that the intervention only relate to hardship that is suffered due to the pandemic and cannot be used to make up money that's been lost before the pandemic. And when we get to SARS, we will see the first thing that they say, you must be tax compliant. Now, most of us know that many small businesses are not exactly tax compliant at the moment because of the economic circumstances, and they are then necessarily just excluded from all of this. To go back to the tax incentive, the This tax incentive is applicable only for a period of 4 months, from the 1st of April to the 31st of July. And what it comes down to is that there will be a monthly refund to employers of 500 Rand on PAYE for all employees younger than 65 and younger. Those of you who know the ETI scheme knows that it's normally for people younger than 30 years of age. It does not exclude people who's already on the employment initiative claim system. And the tax reimbursement will be done on a monthly basis. The second intervention is that of deferment of PAYE. This is only applicable to SMME, small, medium, and micro enterprises, which are defined as businesses that have a income or a turnover of less than 50 million Rand per year. Once again, the golden thread, tax compliant businesses only. What it comes down to is that there will be a deferment of the PAYE liabilities in terms of the PAYE that you've deducted from employees to pay over for the next 4 months, on which there will be no interest or penalties. That PAYE does not fall away. You will still have to pay it, but you only have to pay it from the 7th of September and then pay it in 6 equal installments. I assume that the reason for this is to give you a break over this period, that you only repay this at a later stage. The third intervention is corporate tax that is deferred, and this is deferred in quite an important manner. Once again, the two riders, the 50 million turnover and the tax compliancy of the business. You only have to pay 15% of your tax liability in the first provisional payment, only 65 in the second provisional payment, and then the final 35 is not paid on the due date, but you have 6 months after the end of the financial year to pay that amount. And once again, there will be no penalties or interest on that. I've also read that there will be a temporary reduction in unemployment insurance and skills development levies, but there's no information about that available at the moment. As with all the other tax issues, these come from press releases made by the minister, but the actual regulations have not been published yet. Perhaps it will be published today, and then we will have more information on that. The next step is from the standard bidding document, Small Enterprise Development Agency and the Small Enterprise Finance Agency, and they have 2 facilities. The first is the Business Growth Facility, which is for the funding and supply of healthcare and related products. These products must only be used for the combat of the spread of COVID-19. So this is not a general healthcare or related products facility. It's only in terms of the pandemic itself. The second one is a bit wider. It's a debt relief fund. It is a soft loan that you will pay to, or that you will get to help your business to keep afloat during that period. It's quite interesting that this relates to existing debts and payments that's due. Now, the facility is quite wide. It's not only to finance those debts and payment, but it also can be used to acquire raw materials, pay for labor and operational costs. It can also offer working capital, payment for stock, bridging finance, order finance, financing of equipment, and it depends on the needs of the specific business. The qualifying criteria are once again SMMEs, less than 50 million, but then there are extras that we haven't seen in the SARS criteria. And that is, the company must be 100% South African owned or owned by South African citizens. Many companies are owned by trusts or by other companies. I assume as long as those companies, the beneficiaries of a trust or the shareholders of the holding company are South African citizens, it will still fall within this ambit. 70% of the employees should be South African nationals, which includes all the Zimbabweans, Malawians, and Mozambicans we have. irrespective of whether they have a work permit or not. The company must once again be fully compliant and registered with SARS. And the financial position of the company must relate to COVID-19. Now, as I said before, it covers quite a wide range, even existing debts and payments. But the reason why you are not able to service those debts and payment must be due to the intervention of the pandemic, or then most probably because of the lockdown period. The rider on this, which is quite important, is that priority will be given to businesses owned by women, by young people, and with persons with disability. Now, exactly how this will be done, we do not know. It is also not typically in terms of the BEE requirements. It is more narrow than that. I assume the reason for such a rider is that there's only a limited number or amount available, and there must be some or other way that there must be made a distinction who will get and who wouldn't get, other than who applied first. We understand from all these different platforms, including the employment remuneration platforms, that they are so overwhelmed by the numbers of applications that they are actually not really functioning at the moment. The Industrial Development Corporation has also made available a fund of 3 billion rand to help vulnerable firms give fast-track financing that is critical to the efforts to fight the virus and its economic impact. So obviously this will have to do with medical and hygienic interventions, but it can be much wider than this. It can also relate to companies who render essential services, and I'm sure that many of the companies who service and maintain in the construction industry may fall within this, but also in terms of the economic impact of the pandemic, which means it's wider than just the current essential services or lockdown. Unfortunately, there's no further information available on this, also not on their website. If you are interested, I would suggest you contact them and find out exactly who can qualify and who may share in this funding. The certain business partners has also made available relief funds. The first is the Kuma relief program. Business must be tax compliant, as we've seen with most of it. It's got a fund of about 1 billion, which is a donation, and it will provide quite a variety of different funding methods. The first is in the form of a grant to what they call entrepreneurs, but who are apparently sole providers. Just as a quick, for those of you who do not understand what this terminology means, businesses can trade in a different formats. You can trade as a trust, which is highly unlikely in South Africa. But you can also trade in a company or a closed corporation, for instance. Then many people just trade in their own names. That is what we call a sole proprietor. I trade in my own name, and I have my business account as part of my personal assets. I haven't got a registered company. Now, these grants in the first place apparently apply to entrepreneurs who are sole proprietors. It's a once-off grant of 25,000 rand. But businesses can also qualify this, and businesses include companies, closed corporation, and trusts, who also can get the cash payment of a 25,000 rand. But on top of that, a registered business can also get a low interest loan of anything between 250,000 and 1 million rand. Low interest is obviously lower than you will get from a commercial bank. There's also a 12-month repayment break or a payment holiday. The payment of the loans and grants are supposedly be quite quick, in that it will be out in about a period of 7 days. I'm sorry, I'm missing my own slides here. You just go back into the slides. There we go. There's a Kuma relief program. As I said, tax compliant, 1 billion rand donation, the 25,000 rand grant to a sole proprietor and to a registered business. And then on top of that, a registered business can apply for a low interest loan of between 250,000 and R1 million with a 12-month payment holiday, a quick payment of 7 days. At this stage, there have been more than 10,000 applications received for this. As a result, they have temporarily closed the applications on the 6th of April. I assume that the word temporarily means that they will reopen it at some other stage when they've got the capacity to deal with all of these applications. Then you must have heard a lot about the Solidarity Fund, which is a fund that the government requests everybody to make donations into. Except if you're going to be involved in the prevention, the detection, the care for, and the support of COVID-19, this will probably not be applicable to you. The website of the fund is also very unclear. It only asks for donations, and one cannot find out from there exactly what the money will go for or who may apply for that. I therefore rely on the 4 key initiatives given, which is basically the prevent, detect, care, and support that I referred to. Of more of a technical nature, companies and closed corporations previously, but companies are registered, the Companies and Intellectual Property Commission, CIPS for short, and that's where we file our annual returns and so forth. One of the ways that one can file for insolvency is, for instance, by just filing a notice with CIPS with certain affidavits. Now, normally, in terms of the company's law, when a company cannot pay its debts as they become due, it is regarded as commercially insolvent, and that would be place a duty on directors of a company to put that company either in business rescue or in liquidation. At this stage, it seems that there's going to be some leniency on the side of the CIPS in respect of when a business is going to be insolvent because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and they have suspended any insolvencies until further notice to give some leeway in respect of cash flow. Then there are more technical extensions, for instance, for the filing of annual returns, where a company's annual return fee has not been paid and the annual return has not been filed, the company goes into deregistration in certain processes until it reaches final deregistration. And apparently this deregistration process have been suspended until further notice. If you have made application for a name extension before the lockdown, you will not lose it within the set time period, but it will be automatically extended. And then there's general provision for extension of time periods for business rescue proceedings. The National Empowerment Fund is a fund of 200 million rand. It's only applicable for the funding of Black entrepreneurs. And it's got to do with COVID-19, the production of a range of products to flatten the curve of infection of the virus. From a commercial point of view, most commercial or the major commercial banks have various initiatives to assist people in terms of repayment of loans, repayment of vehicles, and so forth, and also offers credit insurance. If you have an overdraft or a loan repayment, or even in your personal capacity, a home bond that must be paid, I would suggest you approach your bank and see what options they have available. There are also industry-specific initiatives that's been promulgated by government, which might not be applicable to the audience, but this is in tourism and in agriculture. For as far as you have a retail business, meaning that you sell products from a basic point, for instance, a plumbing retail business, there is a relief package that has been decided upon by the property industry group. Is principally for SMMEs, once again, the 50 million and lower, but although it might include bigger retail businesses. It's a relief in respect of rental. It might either be rental discounts or even a total remission of rent up to 100%. And I would suggest you contact your landlord in that extent. The decision of the group was that it will be interest-free rental deferrals from April to May. the purpose is just to mitigate the impact on retail businesses who cannot have walk-in clients. There are two private billionaires in South Africa who also have certain funds. The first is the Oppenheimer business loans, but unfortunately that has all been taken up already. And then Patrice Motsepe Foundation has also donated R1 billion, but that is solely based on saving lives, which is a medical intervention, and then also in terms of school interventions. The Department of Economic Development, Tourism and Environmental Affairs also have certain interventions to assist businesses with the outbreak of the coronavirus. At this stage, we do not know what those interventions will be or what it will entail or who would qualify. They are currently only creating a database of businesses that may require interventions, but they do offer a one-stop business portal. You have the web address there on your screen. If you are interested, you're welcome to contact them. The Southern African Venture Capital and Private Equity Association also announced that they have an SMME support platform. No further information available, but I have given you the web link. Then there's the Giving for Hope Foundation, who say that they have R100 million towards a proposed R250 million fund for SMME support, which will be available for application from the 15th of April. At this stage, there is no information yet available on their website. I have given you a link to the website if you want to continue looking for that. The Financial Services Board, and this might be an important issue, has also stated that insurers should give support to SMMEs and individuals. In terms of short-term insurance, it excludes long-term life insurance, to give some remission in terms of premiums, and also give accelerated use of cashbacks to settle outstanding balances. The details will be available from the individual insurance companies on request. And those are the interventions that we are aware of at this stage. As I told you from the start, there's a golden line that runs through it in terms of who can apply. Basically tax compliant SMMEs, and then there are sifting criteria which may or may not relate to some extent to the BEE criteria. Some of these funds have already been used up, but we would suspect that as the pandemic continues, more interventions or larger funds will become available. Right, are there any questions?
Thank you, Peter, for this presentation. There is a question from an attendee. The question is, should a company be an essential service, that is plumbing, receive the permit from CIPC, but has a branch of building which is not an essential service, say half of the company, will they be considered for relief grants?
I think you will be considered for a grant, because the impact that is in your business might not impact the entire business with no income, but it definitely impacts your business due to the pandemic. And the qualifying criteria is not that it must be totally impacted and that it cannot partially operate. As you've also heard in terms of the employee interventions, it's also applicable to companies who are partially closed. Even essential businesses do not have the full complement of their staff working necessarily. The regulations say very clearly that the head of the association must decide which of the employees are actually essential. So I do think that you will qualify for this help.
Okay, thank you for that. I believe that's it for the questions. Is there anything you'd like to add before I end off?
Thank you. If there are any further questions, you've got our email addresses and our contact particulars on the slides. You're welcome to contact us about any further queries.
Thank you very much. I see there is a question that just came in. The question is, if I don't contribute to any UIF, will I qualify?
Yeah, the UIF contribution has only got to do with the employee remuneration interventions. So if you want to apply for that flat fee UIF of 3.5, or you want to apply for the TERS COVID-19 for payment of your employees, it's a requirement that you must pay UIF. but it's not a requirement for the business intervention for small businesses.